Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Histories in Miniatures video, where today I'm going to be talking about the infantry during the Napoleonic Wars. Before we get straight into the infantry, I just want to break down the sizes of things. So the biggest thing you would have is a brigade. A brigade is like an army company almost, like an army, literally. The brigade would be broken down into regiments, so a brigade might have 2 or 3 or 4 regiments, a couple of infantry regiments, a cavalry and artillery regiment. And then from the regiment, you'd have the battalion. Now, the battalion was the bog standard, like the basic sort of military piece you'd have on a battlefield. So you'd send a battalion to capture the ridge, or you'd have a battalion hold off this attack on the flank. A battalion would normally, an infantry battalion, would normally comprise of 10 companies. Now, a battalion would be light or regular or line battalion. In this particular video, I'm going to talk about line battalions only. I'm not going to talk about light battalions. That's a whole different thing with whole different tactics to it. A line battalion would have 10 companies. It's getting easier, trust me. And each company would comprise of about 100 men. Again, they did sort of change, but if you imagine a battalion in general, a fully strength, up-to-date, ready battalion for battle would have about 1,000 men in it. Each company, you'd have 8 companies would be your regular infantry. Line infantry companies. 1 company would be light infantry, which you'd have as skirmishers. They'd also be sort of potentially better at shooting, maybe sort of your best shots in your regiment. And you'd also have 1 company of grenadiers, who at this point in time wouldn't actually be throwing grenades. They'd just be your big fellas, your big beefy tough fellas. So the elites of your battalion would be seen as your grenadiers and your light infantry, and then your core would be the other 800 men who'd be your line. During this period, the main weapon of choice would be the musket. You would occasionally have some rifles, and some rifle regiments would be around, but the main thing you'd have is your musket. Now, a musket's a smooth bore weapon, and what does that mean? Well, smooth bore is like a smooth hole, so like a pipe. If you imagine the inside of a pipe is nice and smooth, there's no grooves, that's a smooth bore weapon. So you drop your little musket ball down it, you put powder in and everything like that, and you pull the trigger and then the ball would fly out. Muskets in general were not the most accurate of things, actually. You've got different statistics and different measurements depending on who you're talking to and who did the ranges, but they did some tests where they'd line up a big battalion of infantry and have a target about the same size and shape as an enemy battalion, and then they just tell all the men to open fire. At 70 meters, you'd get a success rate of about 60% hits. At about 140 meters, you get a 40% success rate. And at 210 meters, you get a 5% success rate. So you get 1,000 men lined up, aiming 210 meters away at another 1,000 men. 5% of those shots in a sterile test environment, 5% of those shots hit. So that's about 50 holes were in that giant sheet in a sterile environment. Actually, on the field of battle, the statistics and the figures got much, much worse. Again, it depends on where you look for your information, but the battlefield statistics is at best, and this is at best, 1 hit for every 300 shots fired. So your 1,000 men line up against another 1,000 men. The best kind of statistics you got on a battlefield was after a volley, every 1 shot, every 1,000 bullet shot, 4 men maybe? Good, maybe 5? As an infantry battalion, your aim was not necessarily to open fire with your muskets and kill off thousands of opponents. No, your aim was to push the enemy off the field. Your aim was to charge. Your aim was to get in there with the bayonet. Your aim was to take that ridge and keep that optimal spot away from the enemy. Your aim potentially was to hold an enemy in line while your cavalry did something, while your artillery did something. Because again, in the Napoleonic Wars, nothing was used in isolation. Infantry worked with artillery, worked with cavalry. So even though it doesn't sound like the musket was particularly effective as a weapon, and you'd be lucky if you took down an opponent, even in a regiment with a load of your mates, that wasn't the purpose of it. And you'd again find scenarios where you'd have the British in a nice big line where everyone's opening fire on a French column, and the weight of fire would stop that column advancing, because the aim of the French column at that point was to hit into the enemy. But the amount of fire would stop that column. It would check that column. You'd start seeing men fall down into the front of the French column, and then the French column would back away. So, as a British battalion there, you've done your job, you've held the enemy up. Yeah, you haven't killed 500 out of that battalion of Frenchmen, no. You've killed 40, 50, but you've made them pull back after a few moments of engagement. And again, Napoleonic Wars, these engagements could last a lot longer. You could find two sides lining up against each other, taking shot after shot, lasting for hours potentially. But you wanted dynamic command that could take advantage of situations on the battlefield when they took place. And that's why you see people like Wellington so successful. You see Napoleon so celebrated, is because on the field of battle, they could adapt to these scenarios. The basic infantry battalion, the line battalion, was quite a clunky thing, but it was also quite a powerful thing, and it was the battalions that won fights. The other thing that you kind of have to question is, why was the aim and accuracy so poor? Well, again, most infantry weren't really trained to be accurate. They weren't trained to aim for an enemy and hit. They were trained in rate of fire and formation. So you wanted your 1,000 men to form square when cavalry are approaching, to be quick. You want your men to form line when enemy are approaching and you want to open fire. You want them to form column when it's time to advance. And that's the training a lot of these infantry in the whole of Europe had. It was rather on musket drill of aiming. It was how many shots can you fire, and how quickly can you fire, and how quickly can you form into column, how quickly can you form into square. That was the aim of your infantry. It was not, see those people 100 meters away, I need you to hit that one dead on every time of your shot. And again, muskets on average, even well-maintained muskets, would foul 20% of the time. So why would you spend so much time teaching your men to be accurate when you just want them to get as many bullets out as quickly as possible, to make a big bang, to make a big smoky noise, to be a clear presence, and to scare off or push away the enemy? And if it doesn't work, well then you charge and you countercharge and you put the bayonets on and you go in. That was the aim of the infantry. That was the aim of the infantry tactics. And that's not to say infantry didn't do a lot of damage and infantry didn't take a lot of hits, and it's not to say that on the field of battle it wasn't dangerous to be in a musket volley and to get shot at. Of course it was. And units did lose casualties. But you'd look at figures of, out of the 1,000 men, you'd have casualty rates of a battle 100, 150. You wouldn't look at casualty, and that's with artillery and cavalry coming in and playing into the field as well. You wouldn't look at casualty rates of 800, 900 men with only a few turning back. We'll talk more about artillery and cavalry tactics in future episodes, but for now I think I've kind of covered quite a core about line infantry and their purpose on the battlefield. Any questions, leave them in the comment box. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this with people, it really helps, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Bye!